Hey, Frank. What's
All
up?
right, everybody. We are live again Saturday morning. It is a beautiful day outside, and we're happy to have you joining us. You're listening to the Real Estate Radio Show podcast, and we have a special guest today. We'll talk about that in a minute. Dylan Kramer, our esteemed co-host, is running a little bit late, so he's going to be joining us in about 5 or 10 minutes. But today we have joining us, like we do the third Saturday of every month, the amazing duo, Sam Abundez. Did I say that right, Sam?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Dain Laverty, they are the managing partners at Property Pals. And we're going to hear a lot from them today, what's going on, what properties they have available, and how they work with other industry professionals and get them involved in their niche. And also, we are joined today by Frank Montro, broker over at Keller Williams. How you doing, Frank? You doing good? All right. So anyway, we are live again, as we are every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m. from the studios of 8:20 a.m. But if you want to see us live on the air as we broadcast, you can go to the Real Estate Radio Show podcast group on Facebook. We're also on YouTube on YouTube. Where are we? We are on Larry Shakman at YouTube and Larry Shakman on LinkedIn as well. You could also view us on 8:20 a.m. on Facebook. So we're going to jump right into it because we got about 30 pounds of stuff that we're going to stuff into about a 5-pound bag. How you doing, Dain? We on over there?
I think we are. Can you guys?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Okay, beautiful. Okay. All right, so guys, I'm going to start off with the question of the week, but listen, don't answer it now. You know how this works, Dain. We're going to get to it a little bit later in the show. The question of the day is, because we're going to get into this a little bit later in the show, but it's something that, obviously affects our market, and that is inflation. So what was the inflation rate last year at this time? Don't answer now. I'll get your answers in about 10 minutes here when we're on that subject. But again, what was the inflation rate last year at this time? And if you're listening on 8:20 a.m. or watching us on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, remember, this is a full contact sport. So call in at 773-763-9278. You can also text us at that number and let us know what was the inflation rate last year at this time. And if you get the right answer, you might win. I don't know what you're going to win, but you might win. All right. So guys, we're going to jump into it right now. We'll get to inflation and how that is affecting the market. It does affect the market, right, Frank?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, with inflation plus rates being at, anywhere, depending on your credit, typically anywhere from about 6.8 to 7.2. No more 2, 3, and 4% mortgages. Those are history.
Those are artificially driven.
And those are driven artificially, right? But we are now about 6.8 to 7.2. And that's for a 30-year fixed. 15-year fixed might be a little bit higher, and certainly refis are a little bit higher too. We are going to be joined today by Dylan Kramer. He's running about 5 minutes late, so he will be joining us shortly. So a lot of things are going on in this market, like always, there's a lot of stuff that affects the real estate market. And one of those things, well, let's look at it this way. Wholesale prices accelerated more than anybody thought in February. So when wholesale prices go up, that gives us an indication that inflation is still kind of, a sticky matter we're trying to get past here. So with wholesale prices going up in February, consumer spending went down in February. So that gives us a little peek. I think Dylan's coming in now, or
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
okay. So that gives us a little peek into the into what's going on in the market out there. So now we're going to get into inflation in a bit here. I want Dylan to hop on real quick so we can get back to rates when he does. But Dylan is going to explain where he thinks rates are going in the next, I would say, well, you know, it's hard to predict rates, but like I said, we're at about 6.85 to 7.2 for most borrowers right now. And again, you know,
rates are going nowhere, Larry.
Yeah, rates are going nowhere right now, but yeah, but they're not bad still. You know, historically, we are pretty much right in line with where we normally are. I bought my first house probably 22 years ago, and I bought that at 7.5%. That was 22 years ago. So if you're buying a house now at 7%, though these rates are still pretty, you know, pretty even. You know, they haven't gone up, they haven't gone way down. We're never going to see 2% and 3% rates again, probably in my lifetime. I don't know about you guys, you're a little younger than me, but
sub 2, Larry.
What's that?
Unless you buy sub 2.
Right, exactly. I got to talk to you guys about that 6 flat in Inglewood. Yeah. All right, I'm going to bring Dylan on here. He made it, ladies and gentlemen. Dylan Kramer made it.
They were not kidding around.
A lot of traffic on the Kennedy. Yeah, a lot of traffic.
Bad.
All right. Well, you made it. You're safe. Your car is intact, right?
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. You just got to go through the process.
Yeah. So, Dylan, we started talking about rates a little bit. You chimed in there that obviously rates aren't going anywhere. They've been pretty steady for what, the last 2 or 3 weeks, right around the 7% mark.
You're muted, Dylan.
Yeah, you're coming in and out for some reason.
Huh. What about now?
Yeah, put that mic a little closer. There you go.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, awesome. So what do you got to say about rates, Dylan?
I think that if you take a look at rates from the scope of, say, October, when they spiked, right? We saw, you know, that spiked to 8% and then it settled.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a range, and we're in a range between 6.75 and 7.25 for the last 6 months. And it seems like, and you've heard me argue this multiple times before, that we are going to see the rates settle at some point, right? And I thought it was going to be higher than these current levels, but it's starting to feel like inflation is not under control where the Fed would like it, but not out of control like it was, where it's unpredictably spiking all over the place.
Yeah.
And that combination, I think, means we're going to hang out here for a while. There's no argument that the Fed has. We have a Fed meeting coming up this week. There's no argument you can logically make that says the Fed should be certainly not cutting this week. Also, that they should not be in a situation where they announce that, well, maybe by July, everything we see tells us rates will be okay to cut then. There's no argument for that. But there's also no argument for inflation still out of control, right? We had to raise rates to get inflation under control because eggs were $7 a dozen, because lumber had tripled and all that stuff, right?
Expensive omelets, right?
So these are the rates, and we have to make the math work for transactions at these rates. And, ultimately that's where the market's at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, rates are likely to go there. Let's put it this way. They're just as likely to go higher than they are to go lower at this point.
I think that's a very fair argument.
Yeah. And, but like I mentioned, Dylan, we're historically right, at 7%. That's pretty normal.
Larry, you're right in the grand scheme of things. And I too have had mortgages in the sevens. Like, I get it. But look, we have a generation of people that have had rates under 7% and have rates. There are people who are 40 years old who before the last 18 months had never seen a rate higher than the fives. So I think that although your point is correct, it also can I think too many people in our business are not doing the due diligence for the client. Like, oh, you could buy at these rates. It's fine, right? You're not wrong. However, there's also this thing where, look, the house you bought at 7%, the house I bought at 7% or 8.25%, whatever it was in 1994, which is dating myself, right? But it was $194,000 two flat in the city. That's a $490,000 property today.
Yeah.
And so turn around and say, hey, well, it's no problem. That's not true either. It's a problem, right? I mean, now, is it a manageable problem? Is it a get the right deal problem? Is it your real estate team, right? If I hire Larry Shakman to help me find my property and he charges me 3%,
or Frank Montro,
better turn around from a buyer agency standpoint and get me a really good deal so I can make money in the long run if I'm going to bother to finance at 7%, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you got to get the right deal. I think that the rates make everybody hyper aware. But I think the other thing that's attractive about the current market is there are so many people hiding under the covers, not wanting to participate in this market, that you can go get yourself a deal. And, so I think that the knee-jerk reaction that lots of buyers have of rates are high, I'm out, is wrong. But I also think the answer that you gave a minute ago, which is, well, generations of people bought at these rates, it's fine, is also wrong. The truth's in the middle, and you got to get the right deal.
Yeah. So, again, historically, like Dylan said, the rate is right in line with where we have been historically, but not in the last, 4 or 5 years. So it's
right,
or 3 or 4 years. So it is, for those people that came into the market at 2, 3, and 4%, 7% seems like 13 or 14%. Here's the deal. So there was a survey recently where 30%, about 33% of the people that were surveyed said they are going to stay in their homes forever. They're not selling. They're going to be wheeled out of that house.
That number's higher because they didn't survey me and I'm staying.
Yeah. So but here's the thing. The younger folks that were surveyed in that deal said the exact opposite, that they plan on moving. And that's probably because they're kind of in their first time home buyer house, and they're going to move up eventually at some point into a bigger house or, whatever. So
Larry, Dylan, I have a question. Is there any way for agents, managing brokers, loan officers, like anybody to actually sway the masses or the crowds that are buying, to educate them where they can actually understand and actually be comfortable buying? I mean, it doesn't have to be a scorching deal, but I mean, as long as anybody's educated in how to buy with these rates, I would think they would be more willing to buy.
Yeah, that's our job.
That's exactly it. Larry just hit it on the head. I had a whole thing ready to go and Larry just summed it up.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little more succinct than you, Dylan, but yeah, I think we're in agreement that our job, we're consultants. Same with Frank. We are consultants. So our first and foremost job is to consult the client that we're talking with, whether that's a buyer or a seller or an investor. Our job is to consult with them, give them all the benefit of all of our knowledge to make that good decision. The way I consult with people is I tell them what I would do in the same situation. I have a listing appointment I'm going on in Mount Prospect after the show. Well, when I talk to that person, I'm going to, let them know what the market is like, let them know what the market is like in their subdivision, what sold in the last 3 months, why it sold, was it completely updated, how does it compare to your house, and how do we compare your house to the comps on the market right now to get to our starting price, I like to call it. Is that right, Frank?
I'd like to add in also that the biggest challenge is the misinformation that the media is feeding out. They're selling sensationalism. They're not selling the truth. So it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, Sam. So we can't save the world in masses, but we can save the world one on one, like Larry is talking about. How we have the opportunity to be an expert and come as the expert. And that's really where, especially in these times, where we shine. The average agent is an order taker. So that's the other thing, is the average agent's not going to be able to go in and educate people. They're just there to get their paycheck. So we have an opportunity as learned people to go in and make a difference and help people make an intelligent decision, so that, as my esteemed colleague said over here, he bought a property that's worth 100% more now, worth double. So, I mean, talking about equity and talking about issues that are outside of just, the narrow window, the blinders of, oh my gosh, my interest rate 7%, where if you look at it historically, over 40 years, the interest rate is 7.74%. And why aren't people all hyped up about the interest rate on their credit cards? Because it's not being sold as sensationalism. This is not. We're getting pump fake by the media. We're getting misinformed by the media, because that's what sells and that's what gets eyeballs on these channels, so that they get their paychecks. That's all they care about. But the upside is it's an opportunity for us, and that's what I welcome.
Yeah, you're right, Frank, because the average credit card the average credit card interest rate is like 23%.
Yeah.
Right. So we never hear about that, but we constantly hear about mortgage rates. And that's because really real estate drives everything. I think credit card rates don't drive everything, but real estate drives everything. It drives our economy.
Well, Larry, to your point, there's really a situation where, the average real estate transaction, and this number's dated a few years, drives $50,000 to $100,000 in economic activity, right?
I was going to say that, about $52,000.
Title insurance, between the salaries of the people who support that, between the movers, the disconnecting of the cable at the old house and the new house, new carpet, new paint, new plumbing repairs, et cetera, et cetera. Real estate transactions create 6 figures potentially of economic activity.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that's slowed in the current economy. And so it's a real thing. And look, nobody has to get rid of their 3% house because we have to turn around and do business, right? Like, at the end of the day, that's the reality of the situation. I saw a statistic, that licensed mortgage loan originators numbered 450,000 at the end of the pandemic, 234,000 in fall of 2023, last October, and are now 135,000. So overwhelmingly, the business is getting right-sized to the amount of activity that there is. And those people are going and finding other jobs. And what you leave behind is the true professionals, but you still have to have the economic activity to drive the engine of the economy, to your point.
Yeah. So Dylan, you weren't here yet, but we have a question of the day. Don't answer it now, but I want to give you a chance to get it wrong too. So what was our inflation rate last year at this time? Don't answer it now. We're going to get to it in a minute.
No
but
using
what
Google.
was our inflation rate? What was that?
No using Google.
No, yeah. Stay off Google, Dylan. And if anybody out there knows it, give us a call at 773-763-9278. You can text us at that number too. I'll tell you what, you're going to win a $25 gift certificate to Freedom Brothers Pizza and Ale House if you get this question right. Not anybody on this show. You can take me to lunch. But if you call in with the right answer, 773-763-9278, or text the right answer in, you're going to win a $25 gift certificate to Freedom Brothers Pizza and Ale House. It's an awesome, awesome place. If you like rock and roll,
to take me there.
What's that?
I said, you keep threatening to take me there.
Well, we're going to get there one of these days, I promise. And they have it. It's really a great place. So, yeah, if you know the answer,
I wouldn't know.
773-763-9278. You can text or call us in at that number with the answer, with anything you got going on in your real estate life. So we covered rates. We know where that's all at. And we talked a little bit about, Dylan, about wholesale prices going up and consumer spending going down. And that has a lot to do. When you see wholesale prices going up, that kind of gives you an idea that inflation is still a sticky problem, like you mentioned earlier. You know, right now, we're at about 3.2% inflation rate, right? And the previous month, we were at 3.1%. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So last year at this time, now I'm going to give all you guys a chance to answer this question. Last year at this time, and before we get to it though, what are some of the factors that are contributing factors that are causing inflation to stay sticky? Why can't we get below that 3% mark, which is where we wanted to go when we were at 3.1, and instead of going to 2.9, we went to 3.2. So what do you guys think are some of those contributing factors that is causing inflation to stay in that three range or higher, and maybe going higher? I won't be surprised if in April, when we get the update for inflation data again, if it goes even a little higher than 3.2%. What do you guys think is driving that?
Them not accounting for gas, food, and everything else in the expense in the inflation rate.
You know what, Sam? I agree with you. I think the things that are driving inflation right now, there's three things primarily that are really making it hard for us to get under that 3% rate, 3% inflation rate. And that is, you nailed it, gas. So we've all noticed filling up our cars and trucks and SUVs and Broncos, that gas has not continued to go down. We were getting pretty close to a sweet spot with gas, but now it's back up to what, 340, 345?
Yeah, it's not $5 a gallon anymore. But
What's
it's
that?
$4, and it's not $2.50, and so here we are. And I would also tell you, Larry, that I think that the number one thing that is unaccounted for in the inflation numbers on an ongoing basis is that we are now 2 years into this, and the expectation of the consumer that things will not get more expensive is gone. Inflation expectations in the real world are that prices are going to continue to go up, or that of all things, I'll share a little story. I took my daughter to Jewel last week. She went to 2 days ago. She went to a party last night. She bringing snacks, right? So we bought a bunch of stuff. So we're going through the cookie aisle. I'm like, oh, look, Pepperidge Farm Ginger Men. I love those. It's just, so I bought a box of them and I brought them home, and I'm like, I'm going to have one of these before I go to sleep on Thursday. And I ripped the bag open, and it's half the size it was before. It's tiny. I'm like, this is, and you keep hearing about this shrinkflation. And I shrug my shoulders. I'm like, that's how these go. Right. And to the point is, I was 0% surprised. I've stopped being mad that whatever you open has less of it in the package and it costs the same. And so I think our expectations of inflation throughout the economy have rippled. So people are demanding bigger raises. They're not working for less. There's stuff that there's stuff all the time. I refereed, of all things, I refereed water polo last night, right? And so I turned around and I got done. I went out to dinner with the guy I refereed with, who's one of my regular referee friends. And we sat down and we were talking about what we were getting paid for those games. I'm like, you know what? I'm not driving up to that school again. I'm not doing it.
Where was it?
It's not worth it between the gas and the trip and the time and the man. Like, by the time we went out to dinner, and don't get me wrong, I was happy to go out to dinner. I was like, I made $37. I could have stayed on the couch. Like, what are we doing?
Where was the school?
I'm not saying it's not relevant to the story.
Okay.
You know,
so
get back up.
okay.
I was gonna
So
just say also, like, Five Guys for a burger, fries, and a drink is $25. McDonald's, the Big Mac is you get shrunken meat, and it's $12. So the the low to moderate areas are not buying. It's not affordable anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of the food, a lot of going out even to get fast food is out of control.
Yeah.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
We got a call coming in. I just wanted to see if we could turn around and put Rodon on the air from Wheaton. He's a first-time home buyer, and I wonder who he has a question for. Hey, Rodon, how are you? Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your situation and how can we help you here on the Real Estate Show?
And save my money. A couple things that irritate me about what's going on right now is, I've been saving my butt off and working my butt off, and I'm going to be a first-time home buyer. There's no way I'm getting in the market and buying a home at 7%. There's no way. I mean, I'll save for another 20 years and die and take cash before I do that. I'm not going to do that. The second thing that really irritates me is about what's been going on, in our whole world the past, 10 years or so. I mean, nowadays, if I buy a home or a condo, I'm going to be responsible and pay the mortgage off. These people are, packing up their moving truck at 3 a.m. and, walking away from their, commitment. And then the place just goes in foreclosure. It makes me sick. I went to college. I take my student loans. People just walk away and now get those, student loans paid off. Wow, that'd be great. I had to pay mine for years. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The world is ridiculous now. It's just there's no easy answer. But what about people? For me, like my dad said, there's only not what you can afford. People overextend.
Rodon, I totally understand your feeling on this matter, and I think that you're spraying all fields a little bit, and I totally understand it. So let's focus on the real estate part of the question. I think that you're right to be really concerned about where rates are. But one of the things that I've had a lot of conversations with folks about, and as a matter of fact, I appreciate you bringing this topic up, is even this week, I sat down with a first-time home buyer who's going to buy roughly a $350,000 house, right? And in spite of the fact that they're nervous about rates at 7% and share your concern about these high rates, the thing is that they're paying $1,950 a month in rent. And so when you take that $1,950 a month in rent and you go out over the next, say, 3 years, even if you put 3.5% down on a house and you buy at these rates, you get the house under your control and you stop renting, right? And so you're going to spend roughly $700 or $800 a month of your payment putting equity in your pocket by paying the loan down. Additionally, a $350,000 house in 3 years could be a $400,000 house. That's $50,000 in equity. For the client that I was talking with, and I don't know that this is going to apply directly to you. But the thing is, I think that there's a point on the real estate front that if you turn around and you sign up and you make your payments, then you're going to turn around and find yourself in a situation where we are able to buy for a client and change their net income by $100,000 over the course of the next 5 years, because they're going to skip rent payments. That's money that goes into equity building and the value goes up. So I'd just share with you that, you know, your concerns are valid across the economy, and we talk about that stuff every week. There's no question about it. But as far as buying at these rates, there's still real opportunity there, and we appreciate the call.
Yeah, and the funny thing is,
you know, I've been in business for 40 years. So the people that bought 40 years ago, 30 years ago, that still are in the houses, they're just paying interest and taxes. So as if they had stayed in a rental property, they would have made their landlord rich. They would have paid off his property. And instead now they paid their property off. And now instead of paying the high rents today, they're just paying interest and taxes.
You're 100% right. I do like to say it's a little cliche, but look, you're always paying a mortgage with your monthly payment. The only question is whose
is it?
Yours, or is it your landlord's?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rodan had a very good point in that.
Devin, can we bring Larry back? I don't hear Larry, but I see his lips moving.
Are we having a problem with audio?
You're good, baby.
Okay, so I think his name was Rodan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear. I was not able to hear him on the podcast, but I could hear him on my phone when I put the radio station live on. So his problem is, you know, and I think it's valid, you know, he feels a little bit, you know, he's out there working down payment ready and all that, and he sees people running away from homes that are going into foreclosure. And, you know, everybody has their own story. You know, I don't think anybody wants to go into foreclosure. I don't think that's anybody's goal to go into foreclosure or, you know, to skip out on their responsibilities. But the bottom line is that exactly what Dylan said, and that is, you're paying somebody's mortgage. You may as well be paying your own, because as you're paying your own mortgage and it's going down, 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 and your home, like it has in the last 90 years, goes up, 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 you're building equity and paying off your house. So I think regardless of the interest rate, like Dylan says, get that house under control and you can always refinance. So even if you're at 7% now, when it gets back down, hopefully to 5.5%, you can refinance. And actually, hang on one second, Dylan, because I want to make this point. FHFA has a new pilot program now that many homeowners are gonna and not pay title insurance costs. Now, title insurance, most buyers and sellers, frankly, aren't really acquainted with how much title insurance and all the other little fees that go along with it are, but it's really your second most expensive thing when you're buying a house and when you're selling a house. You know, $200,000 house, the card rate for title insurance is about $1,950, and it goes up about $1.50 to $2 every $10,000. So, you know, if you're selling a $500,000 house, your title insurance is probably about $2,700. So when people are refining, though, with this new program, many of them will not have to pay title insurance. So that's something also that if you are in a 7% mortgage and you go and refi, it'll be even a little cheaper as far as that goes. Plus you'll get a better rate.
Larry, is that considered a grant?
No,
No,
it's a new pilot program that FHFA just rolled out recently. Mm-hmm. And not all, but some buyers will not have to pay title insurance.
I'm for anything that covers the cost of refinancing or reduces the cost of refinancing, right? Yeah. Especially, and I think that this is a thing that we can circle back to Sam and Dain, because I think that one of the things that happens with you guys is you end up in a business where there's more proactive conversation about refinancing as a strategy, right? Whether it's acquisition and then hard money to turn around and get the property where it needs to be from a value standpoint and re-extracting that for a hold. So those multiple transactions can have an impact. I just would caution everybody, Larry, that one thing, because I'm don't get me wrong, I'm for it, but we've been saying for couple of years now, marry the house and date the rate, right? Everybody's heard that. And now we have all these people in these houses that are in situationships with their rates, and they can't get rid of them. So there's no guarantee that rates are going to drop. Although if and when, I do think it's a when eventually, they do, you want to capture that savings. That's for sure. That's 100% true. But if we end up in a situation, no pun intended, we end up in a situationship where rates stay in the 7s for a while, you're going to have these payments. So everybody's got to make this math work when they do their transaction.
Again, I think
the other thing too is home prices aren't going down.
Yes. We were talking about inflation and we're like, oh, prices will drop. No, they won't.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
Yeah, there's no chance. I mean, after the pandemic, so cheap. Those home prices are a thing of the past. They're legacy prices at this point. So I think being able to get in, and you may take like the analogy of situationship with the rates. I mean, it's totally true because you can always refinance down the road. There's a ton of ways to add value to the home.
Correct.
And even though it's a competitive market, it's really just about getting in, right? It's not about getting it perfect.
It's always better to own than it is to rent somebody else's asset. So I would rather own my own home, even at 7 or 7.5%, right, than rent somebody else's home and have them and pay off their mortgage. That does not make sense economically from a personal economic standpoint at all. So while I do have sympathy and while I do agree with some of what Rodan is a little bit upset about, I will say that renting is, if you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, you need to call Dylan and get pre-approved and get yourself into a house, whether it's a condo, a townhome, a duplex, a single family home. Even at 7.25%, you're way better than renting, because renting, you get no benefit from.
I really think, Larry, that the numbers are 100% right. You're absolutely on point when you say that. Look, at that $2,000 rent number, just not renting the next 3 years will save you $72,000.
Yeah.
Then if the property goes up in value by $30,000, which is 8% over 3 years or 2.5% a year on a $350,000 house, that's another 50 for 120. And then let's say it's $800 a month in principal reduction, give or take, on the loan. That's another 10 grand a year for 3 years. So now you're in a situation where it's $150,000 change of your net worth. Look, there's been studies. The average net worth. And so I worry that people don't see the intangibles going down the road. The net worth of a renter, a 50-year-old renter, is $14,000. The net worth of a 50-year-old homeowner who's been a homeowner for 15 or 20 years is $400,000. It changes everything. And it's the little intangible stuff where you save more money on your taxes by deducting your property tax bill and your interest. Now your tax bill is lower. You can invest in a 401k or an IRA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It has a cascading effect on your personal finances to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars to own real estate.
It's great that the gentleman called in, Rodan called in and expressed his anger and frustration, because it's an opportunity for Dylan to explain the dollar amount, the savings. Now, Rodan, if you're still listening, hopefully you can understand why it's important for you to invest in real estate. And as my buddy here said, prices are not going to go down. If you look at the main cause of why prices stay where they are, it's a supply and demand issue. And the problem is, if you want to call it a problem, is that we have high population numbers for at least the next 10 years. So there's going to be, between that and between all the other people that are sitting on the fence that are starting to get back in the game of vesting homes, we're going to have an issue with demand for a long time. So that is to protect. That's the reason why a lot of these values didn't go down, because we just have too many players on the field. We're still getting, spring is the one thing that's interesting about seasonality over the years, Larry, is that the weather is the biggest factor. So as soon as it warms up, people come out. It doesn't have to be March 1st. It could be January 1st. If the weather is below 10 degrees, it's been my experience over 40 years. I can go jump on a plane and play golf in Florida till the weather changes. I mean, there's just the activity goes down so much, and because people just don't want to come outside, so people just don't want to shop. But because we've had such a mild spring now, people are out in full force. I'm seeing that, the multiple offers early. They started in January and February, where we weren't expecting them to come into March. So during the seasonality time, weather is the biggest influencer on whether people are out there or not. But understand, Rodan, hopefully other people that are listening to understand that you are giving your money away. You are making your landlord rich and keeping yourself at the same point. Why give your money to your landlord where you can turn around and give it to yourself? And I love how my colleague Dylan explained all the different ways that you're losing out, from your tax write-offs to the equity built up to you're paying your mortgage off. I mean, you're losing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of your loan. And on the south side, where I do a lot of business, 2/3 of their retirement money comes from their home when they sell it.
That's right.
Think about that. So I mean, buying a home is for savings for a lot of people. So if you're renting for the rest, Rodan, if you're digging your heels around renting for the rest of your life, you're missing that boat as well too. So hopefully today we've helped you put on a different pair of glasses. We've helped other people that are looking to put on a different pair of glasses. Now's the time to get in. I mean, say, hey, I'm going to wait for interest rates to go down. I mean, listen, when is that? When is that? I mean, is it 10 years from now, 20 years from now? You're going to look for another time when the rates get artificially driven down by the government? Or are you just going to jump in now and take advantage of the opportunity that's here in front of you?
Yeah,
Frank, Larry, can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess for individuals that are listening as well, I mean, there's a thing from our side, right, that people might not know because they're first-time home buyers, but you can house hack where individuals are actually paying your mortgage, right? You can buy a 2-unit, a 3-unit, a 4-unit, because FHA allows you to buy anything between a single-family residence up to a 4-unit, and you would still be able to qualify under an FHA loan. So if you're willing to sacrifice just a little bit for an extended period of time, you can actually move into one apartment, whether it's a 2-unit or a 4-unit, and then rent out the rest. I mean, you might even, fare well and cash flow that property. But, individuals have to be able to, think open-mindedly about owning real estate, right? Especially in these hard times right now.
Sam, it's funny that you bring that up.
Hello?
We're in a situation with a client currently who is not only doing an FHA loan for 3.5% down, but additionally, they're doing a renovation loan. So they're going to buy a house under market, invest $100,000 or so, and build $150,000 or $170,000 in equity right away.
Sweet.
I think the other thing to
go ahead.
I'll just say, I think the other thing to look at, and what Sam was saying, is you can also do it single family homes. So you can purchase a single family home, you can rent that out, and you can continue to be a renter, because then you'll have the equity and have somebody else paying off your mortgage. So I think, just like Sam said, being open-minded, I think people are just going to have to learn to be a little bit more open-minded about how they go about the home purchasing process. And again, you can still get the house in Westmont, you still get the house in Lombard, because as home prices have gone up, what else? Or as interest rates have gone up, what else has gone up? Rents. So you can get the rents to cover that debt service. You drive down the value of that home, and then when they move out and you want to go settle down, you can go in there, you can pull that equity out, you can rehab the house. And so you can put yourself in a position, as long as you're looking 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
And the front line in that are the agents, right? Agents and some even loan officers. I mean, loan officers can educate, buyers in regards to have the ability to, think outside the box and house hack a little bit and create wealth like that and actually become a landlord, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
being a homeowner.
It's always better to own than rent. It's as simple as that. I get it. I know why people get upset because they see other people walking away from their obligations, but that should not be what drives you in terms of your own personal economic future. And the bottom line is what Frank said is very true. Many people out there, the majority of people out there, the majority of their retirement savings comes from the real estate that they end up selling. So it's super important to know that, it just makes sense to own. It's that simple. It makes more sense to own than rent. Dylan, you said we got another caller?
Yep. Let's talk to Craig. Craig, how are you today? I'm fantastic. So how can we help you here on the Real Estate Radio Show? I'm fantastic. So how can we help you here on the Real Estate Radio Show?
Well, I'm curious how you'll explain some facts. And I don't want them to be facts because they're visible. I couldn't tell you whether they're accurate, but I will tell you this. According to the Census Bureau, Cook County is down about 200,000 since 2020. And the other fact is my AV in Cook County, Buffalo Grove, rose in 1 year.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Craig, at the end of the day, you're never going to turn around and find an argument from me about mismanagement in county property taxes and mismanagement at the government levels. They need your money. They're not going to turn around and tell you, in spite of the fact that your property tax bill is going up, that your value is going down, like whatever. Those are government statistics. You've heard me rage on this show over the course of the last few months about government statistics, whether it's your property tax assessment or whether it's the monthly employment figures that get revised downward. So we have a fantastic spike month one, and then month two, they're like, oh, those $200,000 jobs last month, never mind, that was 38,000. So I never believe government statistics. You're right. I think if you take a specific county, any county, and you look at the population base, you're going to find it's too small a sample to give you an overriding factor. I would go and back to what I've talked about before on this show, which is we have the biggest spike of 28 to 35-year-olds right now than we've had at any time since the baby boom. And those people need housing. We were making jokes 10 years ago about how they were all living on their parents' couch and working and blah, 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 blah. Well, you get married, you have a couple of kids, you need housing. And they need housing. And that reality is true in Buffalo Grove. It's true in DuPage County, where I live. It's true in Will County. And we're building less houses as a country than we did before the crash of 2008.
Well, we've underbuilt for the last 15 years
relative to the amount of properties for sale. If you add to that the corporate ownership of houses that's taken place over the last 5 years, extracting properties from the pool of available properties to buy, further spiking prices on the houses that are available, all of these factors are combining. And I think it goes back to what Sam and Dain do, which is, geez, too many D's in one sentence. You have to turn around and you have to make yourself avail yourself of all options for quality inventory. And I think that at the end of the day, I can't tell you that, hey, I would just argue that there's not a connection at all between $200,000 people population leaving Cook County and a spike in your tax bill. Your tax bill spiking because the government wants your money. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think in Chicago, and populations move differently in different areas, right? So what's an area that's really hot? Houston is hot, right? Houston's always hot, it seems like, right? People are always moving to Houston. They love the climate. It's a warm weather climate. People have been moving out of Illinois in the recent years. And a lot of it's because, Illinois is one of the highest taxed states in the country. So people are moving to other areas where they have less taxes they have to deal with. And that's the reason for a lot of, a lot of movement in terms of population. Now, I will say this, the market out there, the housing market is still very hot. I put a property on the market, and if it's in great shape and it's priced right, I'm going to get multiple offers on that property. There's no question about it. It's nothing magical I did other than, hopefully give that seller the right information in terms of what their starting price should be and how we could get as many eyes on the property as possible when it first comes on the market, because that's how you drive your price up. But yeah, I mean, populations move. It's, that happens, and it's going to continue to happen.
Yeah, Larry, I think if we as a community that do wholesaling can actually become efficient at putting properties back on the tax roll, back into an actual family living inside the house, I think we can make a dent in this housing market shortage, right? I mean, granted, we're not going to put as many as these builders are building, but I mean, we could put a dent in the demand, right? Just by us being able to efficiently source these properties and put them back.
Yeah, anytime you can add properties to the inventory, you're doing everybody a favor, which is what you guys do. And, something that I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you guys heard it or not. We're having a little bit of audio funkiness here, but builders have underbuilt for the last 15, 20 years. I mean, we just haven't built enough homes in the last 15 to 20 years, which is why we have such an immense shortage of housing, along with the fact that people that are at 2, 3, and 4% mortgages, they don't want to sell and drive into a 7% mortgage. So those two things combined are going to, create a bit of a shortage. So I think that's those two things are what is what's driving the shortage in the housing market.
So Larry, we got about 1 minute to go, and I would just ask everybody who's on our panel today, or maybe just one person, like we've talked a lot, we got a lot of kind of agitation about this market. And we've talked about the bad news, but I think we've tried to focus. Let's bring it back and wrap on the good news. What's available in opportunity in this market? Larry, you want to take that? You want Frank to take it? Who you want to take it?
Well, listen, I'm putting a property on the market shortly, townhome in Mount Prospect for somewhere in the range of 330, 340 that I guarantee you we're going to get multiple offers on. The buyer demand is still out there. It's still very, very strong buyer demand. And if you do the right thing and you listen to the professional you're working with, you're going to do great when you sell your home. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from a seller's point of view, right now, the market is very strong. You're going to be able to maximize your return on a very short period of time if you price things right. From a buyer's point of view, hey, get in the game right now, because there's still a lot of great programs out there, and inventory is coming on the market. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to buy the home of your dream.
Well said, Frank. That's the Real Estate Radio Show for today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you back here next Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
With your